What's going on, everybody? Today is November 14th. It's Tuesday, 10 a.m. on the East Coast, and you are listening and watching the Daily AI Show live. And Beth is back. Nice. Today, right now, at least, we have four. So we have Jyunmi, Beth, Andy, and I'm Brian. And we'll see who else who joins us here as we go along. And today, the conversation is about multitasking, but not just multitasking. Obviously, we want to put an AI spin on that. That's the point of the show, right? So today is more about, as it's been 1 week and a day since custom GPTs have been announced. So they're announced during Dev Day last Monday, if you happen to be listening to this on the 14th of November. But I actually didn't get access to them. We didn't know. Some people were getting access. Beth, you got access a little bit earlier. Aaron got access a little bit earlier. I didn't get access till Thursday afternoon. So of course, you're reading documents and you're watching what other people are building, but you're not quite sure. And so Thursday afternoon, Friday morning, Saturday into Saturday, I just started building and I just start playing with it like you guys did and sort of figuring out what can it do and pushing it this way and pushing it that way. But I had the idea for this show came up on Saturday when I was like, oh, the whole thing about multitasking. And I've always read that like multitasking is like fake. It doesn't exist. That people who say they can truly multitask aren't, that they're just quickly moving from a single focus task to another. And that multitasking is this sort of thing that maybe doesn't exist. Although some people will claim that they can truly do it, maybe not. But as I was working with the GPT, it was doing work with me that I did not have to keep my full attention on. And so I had this thought too of, am I multitasking? And as dorky as that sounds, that's kind of where my brain was like, am I truly multitasking? Do I actually have this, not agent, that's too far ahead, right? We talked about that yesterday, but do I have this assistant, this AI assistant with my knowledge and my ability to guide it in the right direction, which is basically it? Do I now have this assistant who's now doing work very similar to the way I might give to an intern? And so is this truly the future of like what we would consider to be multitasking? So that's the idea of it. I want to dive deeper into obviously custom GPTs and all the stuff you guys are doing, but I don't know. Let's start there. What do you guys think? Is that, am I nuts? Is there something to it? Do you think you can actually multitask?
I think you're going down the right track there, Brian. So I've been looking at various studies and where this, the concept of multitasking and what kind of effects that it has on you. So I won't delve into that too deep, but essentially multitasking is bad. That's what I gathered. Depending on, the actual situation. Remember, a study is a very specific slice of that. But I was reading this Stanford study that said people who are working with multitasking between media, like emails or phones or anything like that, they dropped their productivity by like 40%. So having an AI who can be your assistant to take over those kinds of repetitive tasks, especially if they're like mundane tasks, will totally help you gain that productivity back, right? So if you were attempting to go from your email to your phone to, watching a video to, whatever you were doing as part of your process, you can hand that off to the AI, and the AI can provide that lift for you. So yeah, I agree with you. I think you're going down the right path, and I think that's the big benefit of having AI right now. It's the low-hanging fruit. Take care of these things that I have to do every day. I think I was reading another study that said we spend about 13 hours a week reading email. So if AI can gain me that 13 hours back so I don't got to read my email, or at least a part of that, it's totally worth it.
Yeah.
I'll say
so I want to push back.
Go ahead, Beth.
I just want to push back just slightly. Brian said, I was just playing around like everybody else played around. And I just am here to say that Brian did not play around like everybody else played around.
It was playing around to me.
Part of the results that Brian got that we're talking about today are because he I don't know, found a way, created a way, whatever verb you want to insert in there, to basically chain a series of actions within the GPT, which means, because I am not using it as much to multitask because it's coming back to me in a very short period of time. So it is sequential single tasks.
Sure.
And you are the only one that I've seen or heard doing the thing. So I love the idea of this. And I'm so excited for the show. Yeah. Andy, what did I interrupt?
No, you're spot on there. And I just wanted to say that multitasking is bad for humans. It's not multitasking when you delegate to team members, that you get multiple things done. And so the concept of using a team of AIs, because there's no limit to the number of GPTs and or other AI LLM interactions you can spawn. And that's truly accomplishing the objective of multitasking without the degradation of our attention capability, which is limited pretty much, the studies will say, I'm sure, to one thread at a time. So that gets to the point about this pairing of an automation which is capable of multi-threaded operations. You take the output from one or a prompt and you feed it to multiple different parallel threads that are using LLMs. And now you've got an AI agent in effect that's multitasking itself, right? So I want to just get a little more meta here. AI is perfectly capable of multitasking in a way that we're not. So yes, agents which can take action and can have some memory and coordinate. I mean, we've seen some examples early on of agents that can spawn another agent to do a task that it knows has to be done. And so it's really good at this delegation process.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, I agree. So Andy, right before we went live, I don't think it was on the air or whatever. You're like, usually every day I'm usually, chit-chatting and I see the timer counting down and it's like, look, it's 10 o'clock on the East Coast. Let's go. And so Andy said right before we went live, he's like, I'm from the military, which I totally respect. And so he's like, let's keep it on time. Let's start on time, even though we don't end on time ever. What I wanted to bring up to that is span of control, because I was a firefighter for many years. And so span of control was a huge part. And so typically you would say a span of control should not go beyond 5 to 7, right? That was usually where people would say, if you were some sort of manager level of some level, you should not have more than 5 to 7 people directly reporting to you. If you have more than that, you should probably split to East, West Coast, whatever you're going to do. And then that span of control splits out underneath that. And so I think about these custom GPTs, and I'm not saying we're there necessarily today, but what's the difference if I'm a human with a span of control of 5 to 7 humans or 5 to 7 agents that are all working and are managing and are bringing information back to me. And as the human, I'm overseeing those happen and then making decisions based on what those outputs are on how we proceed forward. And so perhaps as if I had 5 interns in this office with me right now, they would do a little bit of work and I would come around to their desk, so to speak, and I'd say, how you doing? And they'd say, I'm doing pretty good. Now that you're here, you said do 1, 2, and 3, which I did, but I'm confused because my 4 doesn't look like your 4. And I go, okay, listen, you just need to adjust this a little bit and you'll be on your way. But probably better communication from me would have helped with that. There is no difference for me between that and exactly what I've been doing with the custom GPTs, because I'm just coming back and saying, I see your answer, but you're a little off, but we're not too far off. So I'm going to help you adjust. We're going to correct our lane and we're going to drive forward to the next task. And when we get there, either ding me or bring me into the role and say, hey, I'm done. Could you check my work before I move on? I don't want to proceed too far down the line, only to find out that if I worked as if you gave an intern and just put him in another room, there's a good chance at the end of an 8-hour day, that intern will have done a lot of unnecessary work because somewhere around hour 2, it went off the rails. They didn't know. They didn't have the knowledge for that, but I did. I was the expert. And so my span of control over those 5 to 7 people or agents, however you want to look at it, to me, I don't see any difference. I think that is exactly what is going to happen. So I don't know that we're necessarily there with custom GPTs today, but I had that feeling of it on Saturday where I thought, oh, this is different. This feels different than if I was just frantically bouncing around. It was doing a task and I was just monitoring it as it went along. But I totally left my attention and went on to another task that I was doing on my computer, making probably thumbnails for the show or something like that. And then every couple of minutes I would come back and go back to the custom GPT. Okay, I've talked enough, but that's where my brain is. So like, am I an idiot here? Am I on the? Do you guys see it the same way or no?
A related point.
Actually,
go ahead, Karl. Go ahead.
I actually looked at it completely a little bit different, where I can see it as where you saw it as a way to add elements to automate. I saw it as a way to further engage and interact, because one of the things that I have been seeing a lot, and I feel it's a big deal, I don't know if anyone else feels a big deal, is you can interact with the actual knowledge source. So no other custom chatbot, when you load let's say a chat base or retune or whatever, you load all the knowledge sources, the web pages, the PDFs, the files, the Q's and A's, but you can't actually ask that chatbot to, hey, document 4, I want you to do this in document 4. I want you to implement. And it's not just retrieving information. So it's like, I want you to implement document 4. And document 4 is a list of instructions.
Right.
And so, I was looking at it as, throughout a conversation, I found something, and because of that, I want you to implement document or instructions number 4 to what I found. So that takes, to me, I don't know if it's more complex, but it allows you to do more things, because it doesn't just have to be find knowledge, use base knowledge to do task. It's implement task using said knowledge, and I want you to implement it to this specific thing. I don't know if I'm complicating it, but I found that it's like, there's sometimes I don't want you to. So what I've been doing is building GPTs with a set of instructions that it's not supposed to pull until I tell it to pull, or like you've done, to automate it. But here I want full customization. So I just don't want it to automate. I want to actually, like, when I tell it to implement, it will implement when I'm doing it. So that just, to me, opens even more doors. I just don't know what the doors I've just opened, but I think there's a lot there. My brain hasn't gone that far yet.
I think
so. Document 4 is the name, or
so for example,
document.
So for example, like say I have a Word document, and in that Word document, it's like, it's a prompt. You will search the website, do this. This is the output that I want, and I want you to do these 4 steps. So, and it's just sitting there as a knowledge source, and it's called, let's say, call it document 4.
Okay.
And I'm just using the thread. I've created a completely different GPT, and suddenly there's an output that I want. It's like, I want you to implement document 4 for this company. That it's popped up. So here's the use case. It's like, okay, I want you to do an online search of a companies for our competitors. Okay, got it. I want you to implement document 4 for that specific company. Okay. And then it would search the knowledge base, look at document 4, and implement it just for that company. Like, that would be my use case from a research perspective. And then it implements it, does the research, does the specific research for these 3 things. It would come back, oh, I've done search on this. This is what I found, blah, blah, blah. So that's just a small use case. I believe that I can do a lot more. I just haven't thought about it. And I'm hoping that all of you could, like, come up with really fun and cool use cases.
Well, so what you're describing, I just want to put a term to it. It's like those documents are subroutines for that GPT. So you can invoke one of those subroutines, and now you've just expanded the capability of that GPT.
Right.
Yeah, the idea.
I would akin it to more like microservices, but I agree with you, Andy. Yeah.
There's actually a GPT that's where I got the idea from. It's called Grimoire. I don't know if you've seen it. It's all over X. It's like a coding assistant But what's really neat is one of the instructions is like, go to README and implement. And I was like, what? So you click it and there's a whole set of, it just pops up everything on the README. And then I thought, if you take that even further, you can actually like engage with one of your documents whenever, because people are starting to add hotkeys into the GPT. So if you press K, it does this. If you press J, it does that. So it's like, okay, if you can implement that, then what can you do with specific set of documents? So essentially you're programming the GPT to go further. Now, I just don't know, again, like how far you can push that. I haven't gone too far yet.
Here's what you're saying, Karl, is I agree with you. I think there's two different ways that I've looked at ChatGPT, or excuse me, custom GPTs. There's the automation, which I already talked about. And then I think you're talking about the other side. So automation is tasks 1 through 10. And together we're going to work through these tasks. I could ask you to run tasks 1 through 10 together, but two things could happen. One, network error, which really sucks, because if it's network error, you're starting back in task 1, whether you want to or not. There's no ability to say, keep going, even though you have a network error. It's a problem that I hope OpenAI solves, is that when it says network error, the only option is regenerate. Well, what if what if it's good enough and I just want to pick up from here and not start back all over and running the prompt? Okay, so that's one problem. Two, as I said before, it could be wrong at task 3 and I won't know till task 10, and that's a waste of time and resources. Then there's, Karl, what you're saying is, and that's the other way I've built, it's similar, a little different, is I've used the knowledge base, the files, and loaded it with, since I'd already created a sales prompt library that had 60 plus different prompts in it, right? I took those prompts, and what I did was I created a new custom GPT, and I said, here's all the ways that you can go about getting information. So now what the user does, as opposed to going to a Notion page and having 60 plus different ways that they can take a templated prompt and then paste it and then fix the variables, right? Because it's going to say industry or title or whatever it is, right? Those are the variables. And you have to replace those with whatever you want it to be. So it runs. I put all that in a file. And now what the system does is custom GPT says, what do you want to do? And you say, and I give them 4 different choices, right, to start with. And if it's like, you really don't know, it's like one of the options is list the prompts that you're capable of running. And then what it does is it says, okay, great. So then it says, well, I want to research this company's top trends. Great. For that, this is the prompt that I think is going to be best. And here are the 2 variables I need from you in order to run this prompt.
Perfect. Yeah.
Then it just runs the prompt. Then what's super cool about it that you can't do in a chat base or something like that is, if I'm the end user, this is akin to an executive coming into an executive meeting and having all these beautiful dashboards in front of them. And then the executive undoubtedly will ask the one question that all the data analysts didn't think to prepare for, and you're effed. Right. Yeah. And now there was tools that were built years ago that sort of fixed that on the fly, where you could dive deeper and drill into different data points and stuff. Yeah. But if I'm the end user, I'm just building the system for them. I'm building the ecosystem for them to play around. So when they get that answer of top trends for company, there's a good chance they don't want to run right into the next prompt. What they might actually want to say is, that's interesting. Can I now know this? Now, that's not in my database. All they're doing at that point is now using and leveraging the power of ChatGPT that already existed to continue on that conversation. But guess what? Once they're good with it, they say, this is really interesting. Now, knowing what the titles are at this company and this sub-industry, can you help me with some key value props that would be associated? Well, guess what? The custom GPT is trained on their company and all their services and products. So it goes, whoop, and it brings them right back in, and it starts creating more personalized content for them. So I see the automation side, where I'm trying to work with it through a step-by-step procedure, which there's a bajillion of these in the business world and personal. And then I also see it as creating a knowledge base of other super prompts that can then go and do super things. And it's just about the end user working with it to get the results they want. Knowing at any time, though, they have the full power of all of ChatGPT plus browsing, which is the big one. That's where Respell and other things fall flat right now. Correct. Is that they don't have the full power of Bing browsing. And it is crazy powerful right now with its citations and everything else. Whatever they've done in the last couple of months has made it a game changer on just the browsing thing for me. So anyway, I think I'm right where you are, Karl, but that's how I've been using it. And it is crazy powerful in being able to do that.
I think the one thing that I'm just by listening to you talk and then me trying to explain it to somebody, I'm like, okay, if you bring it back, I'm like trying to explain this to a business. We have lost them within the first like 10 seconds of we speaking. We're like, blah, 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 blah. And they're like, what are you talking? So I'm just like, how can we explain this ability and simplify it to an audience that is still in the throes of how do I prompt correctly? And I think like, sorry, I may be taking that off track, but it's like, we have so many cool use cases, but like, how do you bring it back? But also, how do you keep exploring the use cases? It's really tough to, and that's where my head is like, we're pushing it right to the limit when like people are like, what is a custom GP? I don't know what a custom instruction is. I don't know what a custom, like, right.
My answer to that is you create the instructions inside the knowledge base. It's an actual file. So what you do is you allow the end user, who we have to assume is going to show up to the terminal essentially inside of ChatGPT Plus. They're going to say they're a sales rep, right? Because they deal with sales. They're going to show up and they're going to be like, my manager wants me to use this. That might be as far as they've gotten, other than the fact that they have GPT Plus. They would have to, right? So we're going to assume they've used ChatGPT a little bit. So my goal is that I have to have 4 really good starter questions to help them get started. But one of them really should be, if you don't know what to do, type in, can I have the instructions? And it goes, whoop. And it gives examples of prompts and things they can ask and what the results are going to look like to get their brain firing. And I think that's all you need for them to be off to the races. But without that, with a blank screen, it's challenging.
I think like that's where, if you want to check out, to me, that Grimoire GPT does an amazing job of that.
Grimire.
Yeah, because essentially the first one of the we know. See, the thing is, we know a grimoire. I feel like a grimoire. The moment I heard it's like this like amazing fantasy book that opens up, like that's, and my mind goes in. But on that, there is. Can I actually share a screen on that? Can I share a screen on this? Because I think this is like present that.
And then while you're getting that set up. One of the questions that you asked was, how do we talk to people who are at that very beginning and learning how to prompt? And I think one of the keys in this is good news. You don't have to know how to prompt anymore.
Because
the prompt is embedded in the GPT. Right? Now you just have a conversation.
Yeah. Okay. It's up. I don't.
Oh yeah. Here you go.
So now this is a little long, right? So it shows like, oh, show me the hotkey, and then like, and on X it was like, it's like because he started thinking about, oh, should I put out like, promoting my website and stuff? And one of the things I thought was like, it takes a really long time to load this thing, like, because like it's like, do this, your code companion, whatever, right? And it's like, maybe you shouldn't be this long, but what it is like, if it keeps going, it tells you all the stuff it's supposed to do, but then it gives you the hotkeys of what, if you're stuck, press SS. If you're this, press K. If you're this, press J. It's like loaded those instructions, and it's kind of a roundabout way to program a GPT to be like a full interactive thing. So like, if you like, and it's like, here's the instructions on how to do everything. And I think his instructions were 7,200 and something characters. That's what his custom instruction was. So it isn't just like a one line, like this was actually like full on, and he has a command menu and everything. So
it's too much.
It's
too much for
like,
the end user.
I'm waiting here and I'm like, oh my gosh, what?
Nobody wants to wait for all this.
No. And like, even I waited the entire time, and at the very end, it's like, oh, like he's like,
Network
should I
error.
put ads at the end? Like, no one's gonna get to the ads. Like, if you're gonna do an ad, maybe put it at the top. But like, don't put an ad on the end. This is. But do you see though? Like, even though you
Yeah.
probably won't, I was like, okay, now let's take this and how could we use this in our GPTs?
Right.
Right. So
I love
like,
the
how
idea.
can you, like, it's like, it's wait a second. Now, if I press W, I can confirm. If I like, how can I apply this to it? And it's a crazy, it just, again, it's like, mine's like, oh, what can I do with this? But it takes forever. You're like, here's the keys. I'm like, no one's gonna wait this long to know every single key, except for people like us, and be like, oh, that's interesting. And then I'm like, but then I'm like,
unless you were going to copy this and like put it on another
exactly
page or something and have it on your desk. I don't know. Like this is impressive, but I think it really needs to be like beginner user instructions almost, you know?
Right. Well, the coding
it should
grimoire
just
is
treat it
not.
as a manual file. Like when you're running Linux, you can just go man this command, and then it'll bring up your manual file that explains how to do all this.
I think
that's what I saw.
I think
when
it should have been that instead of actually like put out the entire README, because that's what it is. It's like, and then you have no one's like, it's like, what is this? It's like, this could have been made up. Like this, like, I don't know who these people are, and it's like, quick. I was like, what? I don't get it. And it's just okay. So
I think it's also frustrating because like after all of the releases and updates, we've seen a marked decrease in speed or of our output in GPT. Yeah. So we, from our use, we're used to it. It's like, oh, well, I guess all 10 million people are using it right now. Okay, I guess I'll just have to be waiting, because we're early adopters, we're experimenting, so that we give it a little more slack than
a regular person be like, this is taking forever. I don't have time for this.
Stacy had a comment back with the topic of multitasking. She finds herself sometimes watching the paint dry to look at what it comes up with. And there's time. You have to remind yourself to do something else and come back to see the result.
I think that goes away with the novelty of it, right? You know, when the novelty fades and this is just a calculator, this is just a camera on your iPhone. Like, I think we're all going to do that because it's new and inventive. And to a certain, even though we've been doing this just about a year now, there's still something to that. Like, holy crap, look what it's doing. Like, that's amazing, you know? And you find yourself like, also, I will say this, Bard doesn't do this, but like they're sort of subconsciously dragging your eye by doing the one line at a time. And I remember somebody saying this months ago. They're like, ChatGPT doesn't need to do that, right? It's perfectly capable of just going blah, just like Bard's like, here's your answer, boom, done. And it's a more subconscious thing that I think is in there because it's like follow the line, and it's like the bouncing ball, and you're like, I'm going to read this as it goes because I want to know what the next line is, whatever. And it's totally unnecessary. It's like, but I think I agree, Stacy. Like it's normal to want to do that, and I find too that like I will start it and immediately jump to another tab, and I'll come back to it when I'm ready to come back to it. And really, really be, crossing my fingers that it doesn't say network error, and it was a waste of time because that's how my morning has gone, if you can't tell. Let's see, we have another question on here. Is it necessary to learn some prompt engineering if I want to create some apps and GPTs? No, not really. No, great question. I think you can start with the custom GPTs has a builder built in. I haven't messed with it. I kind of went straight, I skipped it immediately, went straight to the big side. But I have now watched and played with it a little bit more. It is actually pretty impressive. So no, the answer, and I don't want to mess up your name.
I have used it. Jai.
I say the name wrong.
Anyway, I have used Builder, and I started using Builder, and because I wanted to experience what the interactive capability was, and it's basically just working a prompt, but it's asking you questions about what the task is, what's the context, but it's not using those terms. It's using more natural language for it. But what the output is a prompt. So you can shortcut it all and just talk to GPT Builder. It's right there. You don't need to know how to do prompt engineering.
It seems
I
pretty
think it's
intuitive,
helpful to approach it mentally, to when you expand or refine your custom GPT, having that knowledge, or having that mental state of how your approach is, I think would be helpful, but absolutely do not need.
So
Right.
the grimoire
So
example. I'm sorry, let me just mention that the grimoire example that we just looked at, the underlying prompt for that GPT is mind-boggling. I don't know how they got so much complexity into that thing, but that's not what typical applications of GPT are. They're going to be a narrow scope and just a simple sort of service to you to do one simple task.
Right. So when I read prompt engineering, I was thinking the way that you format the prompt in order to get the results that you want. And you don't need to know that. But Jyunmi is right. Prompt engineering also is thinking about the discrete tasks that are needed to get to your goal. And that is very helpful. Right?
Yeah, because when you look at when you use the the builder, then you look at the actual, if you're able to understand use system thinking, understand like the various elements of a prompt, then you can look at the prompt itself that it's provided and be like, wait, I think I might add a couple things or take away this doesn't make any sense. So you can fine tune that, that like in those instructions even further and make it really, really tailored to your use, which I think is like, it just adds to the whole experience, because there's just some things you're like, oh, I'm gonna have to write a prompt for this. Like, no, but you can add to it. And I think that's like where that knowledge comes in.
Yeah, and I think you kind of nailed it. And maybe it's a good place to sort of wrap this up. Is, we think about multitasking, and if you're thinking about multitasking, you're thinking like, well, what would I like? Maybe a simple task, and like Andy's saying, nothing super complex like Grimoire or other ones. Just one thing I wanted to kind of take off my plate. When you come up with that end goal, then that's really where you should start. That's for anybody. Like, start with that end goal in mind. Karl has talked about this. You talked about this a ton with working with your clients about being very crystal clear about expectations with your clients for custom chatbots, because oftentimes they're not aligned if you're not careful. They're thinking they're going to get one result, and with your expertise, I can only get to this point, and it's good, but it's not where you are, and that ultimately allows them to feel let down, even though that it was far superior to anything they had prior. So I think just as we think about these custom GPTs, you're right. It really comes back to that system idea of what's the end goal? What do I want it to do? Do I want to have interactability with it, or do I just want it to produce an answer? That could right away determine what the best tool is. And then just determining, okay, this is the goal. I'm going to give this to this hypothetical intern. What are the individual pieces and parts and tasks that I would have to do or write down on a piece of paper to literally hand that intern for them to come back with a reasonable result that didn't require me to have to redo the work again, right? That was better than me having to do it myself. And 1 + 1 = 3 sort of situation. So that's probably the best way, I think, to think about these things. Understanding a little bit of prompt engineering, meaning just how to write a prompt, break up a prompt, break things down into that system thinking of individual tasks. That absolutely will help you. But as we're seeing, and Andy was talking about the builder, the helper, I don't know what it's called, the helper side of the custom GPT builder will do a lot of that work for you by just talking a natural language. And that's really, really cool too. It's a great way to learn too, by the way, because it'll build it and then you can go look at the customized side to see what it built, which is really cool. It's a fun way to kind of learn how to prompt as well.
Yeah, Greg has a question.
Okay, we're over time here, but we do have.
How do you build without the builder? How are you guys adding prompt?
You just
on the
click
customized
configure.
side of it, you can just literally write in the instructions there and then use the upload files for the knowledge base, whatever that might be.
Yeah,
PDFs.
there's tabs up there, Greg. The one that's defaulted is the builder, but there's another one labeled configure. Click on that one, and it gives you the structure where you can actually enter.
And it's in the instructions section. That's what you're looking for, Greg.
And then Dan just said expectations management. Absolutely. Anytime you're dealing with any client,
Yes.
expectations management is critical, because no doubt when we're dealing with AI, we have a lot of stuff floating around in our head. But again, we have to remember where the vast majority of business professionals are right now. And they're just not spending all their time looking into AI. No different than I'm not spending all my time looking into the latest and greatest things in, well, my wife's a dietitian. You know, what's spinning in her head and where she has to bring that down to bring it to my level of what the latest and greatest things are in nutrition and dietetics. You know, that's the same for everybody. So we just have to remember who we're talking to and then bringing it to a level that makes sense for them without it feeling overwhelmingly frustrating or some big giant new thing that's not going to be worth their time, because it's just easier to do it the way they've always done it. And so that's always going to be a challenge for all of us. Okay. Well, I think let's wrap this one up, because I would do the TLDR, but I think we'll go on another 5 minutes. So we'll wrap this one up tomorrow, guys. We're going to be back with the AI news. I'm sure we won't be just talking about Dev Day anymore. There's always more AI news that comes out. So we're going to be bringing all that to you guys tomorrow, as we do every Wednesday. And then we'll be back the rest of the week with a couple more AI topics. So keep on coming back. Thank you so much to Stacy in Jyunmi. I'm so sorry if I'm messing up your name. Greg, Dan, thank you guys so much for leaving comments and interacting. And please keep coming back. All right, guys, that's it. We'll see you tomorrow. Till then.
Aloha.
Till tomorrow.